Hello, welcome. If you want to come over here, this is the stage now if you want to get over here. So I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Robert Gash from Hearst. Hearst has been a huge case for the VTEX USA team, and he's been with us together in NRF and VTEX Connect New York City, and we're very grateful to having Robert here with us. So thank you, Robert, very much for being here.
Happy to join you. Happy to share a little bit more than we could back earlier in the year.
So, not many people here in Brazil and in Latam might know who Hearst is. Maybe you can give us a couple of details about the company and maybe get into the why e-commerce.
Yeah. When we designed this slide, we realized that the name Hearst isn't something you see even in the US that often. If you read history books, you might run into it, but the brands are brands that are really quite familiar and quite global. And so this is just a collection of some of our magazine titles that we publish. We have over 25 in the US, and there's actually over 200 globally, different localized versions or sites that we own and operate. And if you think about it, the audience of Hearst is really unique because it covers a lot of different topical interests. So it's everything from newspapers and local news, arts and entertainment often included in that portfolio, to local TV, as well as thinking about each of these magazines, some of which may be familiar to the audience here in Brazil. So, so that's kind of us on the media side. It's also a large data business. That's the part you don't hear as much about. We own Fitch, the credit ratings agency, and a variety of kind of transportation and medical data businesses. But the focus here today, the focus with VTEX, is really around the consumer media side and how commerce is becoming a bigger part of that journey.
So, I don't know if everybody knows about the case, but I think we wanted to get a little bit deeper into the strategy, commerce strategy at Hearst, and then how you see it in changing in the publishing world, and what are the things that you're doing to capture this new world of concierge commerce.
Well, this is something that came out of some of our brainstorming sessions earlier, and thinking just about the challenge we all face as consumers shopping online. Early, it was really important that you have access to everything, so all the brands that were available nationally, and that's still really powerful, but as commerce has gone even more global, you have brands from all over the world you've never heard about. It's actually getting harder and harder to navigate all of that selection. And so that was kind of the beginning of thinking about how can we help our readers. And if you see the content we produce today really speaks to a lot of different interests and helps you navigate everything from how to get started running, what sort of equipment you might want to buy, to what are the hottest trends in home decor or in fashion. And that's the coverage we've always had. But as the audience has shifted online and e-commerce has kind of blossomed, people are using our expertise to navigate the choices that they're facing. And so for us, commerce and media together is really, how do we make it simpler and easier for our audience to actually connect with the brands, purchase the things that they're finding they're getting inspired by? And so that's kind of how we connected it here. And it's really an extension of what started as links to other retailers. Everyone here has likely read an article in some media publication that linked to your local marketplace of choice, right? And that's great, but it leaves a lot of additional research for you, the consumer. You've got to figure out, is it available in your size? Is the price for your size and preferred color the same one that was talked about in the article? Even how has the price changed if you didn't read the article instantly after it was published? With dynamic pricing, it's really hard. And so you end up often with a lot of tabs open. You're going back frequently to a search engine, and you're doing a lot of work after you've decided what you want to buy. And so for us, it's really, how do we bring those things together? So yeah, you can continue. The beginning of this and what we talked about at NRF is kind of the basic building blocks of how do you go to market as a marketplace and a media brand, which we did with Men's Health back in January. And this is a screenshot of the live site. Anyone here can go to shop.menshealth.com and see this experience. And I won't say that individually it is particularly differentiated. It's a great store. It's built on the Fast Store framework. And our thesis here was cover the basics of commerce well out of the box. Make it easy to shop a curated selection. So that concierge component, the way we're merchandising the store, the brands that we invite in are ones that our editors have picked. So they're things that have been reviewed in the article or in the magazine. They're brands that are kind of up and coming and that our editors think are worthy of our attention. And that filtering effect is actually one of the real values as a consumer. When you're in the store, you don't have to worry, how did this brand get here? Was this an open door marketplace where anybody who could sign up for an account can list products? These are ones that have been researched, that have been vetted both by our e-commerce team, but also by our editorial team. So that trust from the brand is transferred into the commerce experience. And we loved what VTEX had available in the Fast Store product here that just gets you to immediate best practice for commerce and site performance without a whole lot of customization required. And that was kind of key to our thesis here, is you need this to work well so that you can then go build the deeper, richer experiences that we'll see in just a second.
And I was just going to mention to the audience that this was a live screen capture I did a couple of days ago, and I was just incredibly impressed at what Fast Store is capable. It was like seamless. You wouldn't even think this is like a Figma or like a fast, capture, but it was like literally me clicking and the store is immediately reacting and providing the content for the full experience. Let's dive a little bit about the, looking at the platform strategy as you look at marketplaces and the shops that we're going to started the journey last year, and now we're looking at 2024, 25. What does it mean when you look at that business and how you create a platform?
One of the things that we set out to do early was really make it easy for us to operate and for sellers to integrate. You think about the number of titles we have in the dozens in just our home market in the US. If we were to build each of those individually and then ask a seller to integrate, you can imagine how much work that would be. And so we said it's got to be easy, and it's got to be easy from the seller's vantage. So find a platform where you can build a single backend that's shared across all of these titles. So you onboard once, you only have to deal with one major interface. But we can then bring those products wherever they're relevant. And so that was kind of what drove the early discussion. And you can keep rolling here. We also wanted a platform that could bring commerce into the content. So that's where our audience lives. We have more than 150 million monthly uniques across the Hearst media properties. So the thing you're always fighting for in startup land, where I spend a lot of time, is getting people to find you. We don't have that problem in the same way. And so making sure that you can browse and do additional research before you leave that point of inspiration is really important to us. And so we needed the APIs and support to be able to do that. We also internally talk about flipping the pointer. So how do we bring content into a commerce context? So you think about a detail page, often has kind of the formulaic details about a product, it's got the variants, all the basics, but it doesn't necessarily have that outside opinion there. And that's where, at least spending my career in commerce, really got me excited, is we have the license to help you understand what and when and where to buy, but also to help you understand how to use it is the other side of our content. So you're looking at this shoe, you've never run for a marathon or trained for a marathon, how do you get started? We actually have that in our existing content library, and we can bring that into the detail page. So not only are you able to do all the research and get the expert opinion, but you also get inspiration of what you can do with it. And so that's kind of been key to this commerce and content, and the arrow really goes both ways for us, and that's what we're starting to build to. And the last one here I'll just mention briefly. You think about our audience today, a good portion of them are members. And we have a very large membership program around one of our US titles called Good Housekeeping. It's been around for eons, it feels like. And they are actually helping us review the products that we're testing in the lab. So they're giving us feedback. Did we get it right? They're helping us understand what it's like in the real world. And so having commerce and the capability to go directly to market with them unlocks additional value for our members kind of down the road. So that's kind of an aspirational thing here that got us excited. But when we picked a platform, we wanted one that could handle all of this, which is a pretty tall order, I won't lie. It was one of the big questions we had a couple of years ago when we started this.
So we'll get into the project stats in a bit, but I wanted to mention something that 2 or 3 months ago, I saw one of your competitors posting a job on LinkedIn for a SVP, CIO with exactly the same job description that you have today. So it seems as though you are way ahead with this strategy, and you're taking, your competitors are taking note of how to survive in this new publishing world.
I mean, look, media has changed a lot, and I don't need to lecture folks because that's well written on the internet. But yes, I mean, it's a way to think about how can we create value for the company from the work that we're doing, and commerce is very much a big part of that strategy. But it's always led by editorial. That's one thing that we really make clear internally as a culture. This isn't paid content that's connected to commerce. This is work we're doing already to basically help people navigate the choices about that interest and in their lives that is talking about things, goods and services you might want to buy. And so we work after that content is created and really make it easy to transact. So that's really the thesis here. But yes, I would not be surprised to know a lot of folks will follow. We hope to stay ahead as long as we can.
So speaking of staying ahead, we started this journey mid last year, implemented your MVP, which was men's health, and we saw the example there. For the folks in the room, it was the first flagship Fast Store project, so the V2 of the Fast Store. It is a marketplace with multiple storefronts and in a unified catalog and operations. And what folks have seen, our product team come here yesterday, talk about fast checkout. What they don't know is that we are already piloting fast checkout on Hearst, and there will be some breaking news here to the audience in a little bit, but one of them is fast checkout, and then the other one is we have been building this architecture to support multi-tenancy. What was the experience when you look at the implementation of the MVP and when you get into the architecture diagram? What's behind all this, and how are we getting there?
Before I answer that question, I have to give a lot of credit to the team that made this possible. You know, we have an excellent team that's split between Seattle, New York, and a couple of folks that are remote in the US. I would name them all, but we don't have time. But they really put a lot of work into making these timelines possible. It was aggressive. We wanted to move quickly so that we could start getting signal back. And we couldn't have done that without the help of VTEX, Valtech, who helped us on the systems integrator project, to actually train us. This was a new platform for all of us. And so we needed to learn it while we were building it with a very, very, very tight deadline. So I would say overall, given all of those independent kind of sources of pressure, it went really well. When we launched, it was one of the more boring large product launches I've ever overseen in my career. And we joke about boring is good on launch day. And actually we had a customer, we have a checkout race is kind of a fun day of launch thing that we do where the whole team that's involved in day of launch, there's a prize given for the first person to start from the homepage and buy a thing. But a customer beat us to the punch. So we ended up inadvertently running for number 2 in the race. But it just speaks to the quality of the work and the time put into it. Architecturally, the way that happened was that we were able to leverage a large footprint in VTEX that we didn't have to go in and integrate and test. So large systems like this, you often have a major vendor on your OMS, you have a major vendor on your financial systems, you have a different vendor for commerce, you may have your own opinion on search. And one of the early conversations when we kicked off was try to stick to what VTEX does out of the box as much as you can. If you have a principled reason you need to change it, okay. And there's parts of the architecture, where we've brought in partners around payments and tax, where it's not something VTEX provides, it's not a capability we provide. And so there's more than you see to this constellation. But at its heart, it's really VTEX on the commerce front, and it's Miracle on the seller integration. We chose Miracle because it was the tool that was familiar to the broadest audience of sellers. Do that, make it easy to integrate kind of capability. That was one way we could go faster when we were starting to acquire selection. So I would say it was enabled by the composability, and some of the stuff we'll talk about in just a second really starts to show how we're beginning to use that composability and customize parts of the experience to enable the growth of these extra stores and to really kind of drive kind of the expansion into more of our audience faster.
So one of the things that I love about this architecture is if you want to do a multi-headed marketplace, right, which is what we're doing, you've got the leverage of the Fast Store as your head, tied up to each individual sub-accounts, which are tied to the collections of each individual shop. So, and they all inherit a very large catalog that is connected to your marketplace partner. So that all the orders that are placed in the front all fall into one catalog and OMS, and you distribute that out into the different sellers. It's just a beautiful picture of what's possible.
That's right, and it wouldn't have been possible in a lot of other platforms. That weighed heavily on kind of our decision for VTEX. But it is where we have started to kind of build adjacent to VTEX as well. We wanted a single view for our own merchandising teams and sellers, as you've mentioned. So that's kind of the unifying layer for both orders and products. But we also wanted our individual sites to be able to merchandise that catalog. So it's not the same products in every site. So the things that are relevant for men's health may not be as relevant for women's health, even though there's a lot of overlap. And so what we have begun building now, and we'll be going live with our second store here soon, is really the ability to create merchandising rules in VTEX using your own functionality, but to essentially populate search indices and catalogs for each of the stores automatically and in near real time, so that when you're shopping Good Housekeeping, you're getting relevant products for Good Housekeeping. And that was something that was pretty novel. It's not a use case that anybody would rationally build for as a platform provider, but was possible because of the way VTEX is architected. And so that's been a real highlight, even though it's been a tremendous amount of work to get to that point, to my team's credit, because they have been up late.
I'd give not just your team, but your leadership, because one of the things that became very clear to us is you took a pragmatic approach to making hard choices as to, do we go out and customize and build, or do we stay with true to native functionality for the sake of going live and minimizing your total cost? And so that was just great to see it in action, galvanizing the team, making these decisions and moving forward. And I think the result speaks for itself in terms of we're able to launch. It was a boring launch. And when I'm always in a go live with a customer, the best thing that can possibly happen is an actual user places the order.
Yes.
I was at a go live a couple of weeks ago, and that happened as well.
Yeah.
And that's just fantastic. You know that everything is buttoned up.
Well, it's I think the other part of our culture is listening for the signal before we decide to go really deep. And so getting live quickly, doing it in kind of a best of breed way where we get to table stake quickly, but then see how people are converting, see where they're spending time, so that we can focus our investments there rather than doing it kind of all in a bit of a vacuum. Even if well informed by user research, you often get a lot of that wrong. And so that was a key thesis when we started this whole project, was keep it simple early, and then we're going to go really deep.
Okay, so now that we caught all the audience up to what we've done, now we're going to go to some breaking news into what we are building. As late as what, yesterday? I think we were talking to
there were certain
team.
Things that were going live kind of late, not related to this conference, but just we're trying to move quickly here.
So tell us about fast checkout.
So many of you have probably seen this if you've stopped by the fast checkout station. I think they've been using us as the demo test case. But when we originally launched with checkout on the store framework, which is a product that's been around for a long time. It's got a lot of unique features. But one thing that was really different is there was kind of a slowdown when you hit checkout, because those pages are heavier, the way it's architected is different. And we knew we really wanted to bring that same speed and kind of interactivity to the checkout itself. We also pushed hard, and we thank VTEX for some shared investment here, for inverting the use of things like digital wallets, so that you can bypass a lot more of that data entry when you're on a platform that supports it. And that was fast checkout for us. We said, look, what's the best way to achieve these things? We certainly could have gone our own way, as some other customers do, but this ended up being the fastest path to kind of achieving a lot of those goals. And the design was joint. We sat down with your team, we said, here's what we need to do. Here are the places where we know we will need to extend in the future. So can we design for those now, but just leave those hooks in place rather than try to build out the full feature set? And that's essentially what you're seeing here. So this is a live production demo. It's showing you some of the fast checkout capabilities there. But we're quite proud of it, and it's been so far so good. We'll be rolling it out to the entire audience very shortly. It's about 50-50 today.
What was the interaction with, if Bella's on the audience, a big shout out to her and the checkout team. What was the interaction with just like building this MVP and actually seeing the reaction from the team and how well it's performing so far?
I mean, it's been good. Admittedly, we're early in our journey overall as Hearst in commerce here, so the audience is just going to continue to grow. But we were able to hit almost all of our design objectives. And again, we started most of this work with VTEX in late December, right after we went live. And so the time from at least together planning and figuring this out to actually being in production was, again, really quick. But we're really proud of the product, and every store that we're launching from here on out is going to be launching with Fast Checkout by default, because we just think the experience is that much better.
All right, another late breaking news.
I won't call this one late breaking. I want to be clear. News has a different context when you're in media here, but this is the extension of the journey around how do we bring commerce into content. And so what you're seeing here, there's a couple of build, but we'll have a video rolling in a minute, is how do we let you do that additional research without leaving the article? So this is something internally we'll call a listicle, where we're reviewing kind of this is a bit of a random assortment because it's our test article, but a long list of products together. And you may be making choices about which one is best for your use case. So you can imagine best running shoes for new runners. They're going to talk about how you run, your body type. And you may want to go in and see, are those shoes in a color that's interesting to me? Do they come in my size? Is it in stock? And that's where the tabs start to explode in the traditional model. But what you'll see here in a minute is what we call the mini detail page. So we're using VTEX to surface 80-ish% of the content that we have on a detail page directly in the article. If you're on mobile, this is a modal that pops up from the bottom. You can see all the variant images. You can research the sizes and the colorways, get the detailed pricing and delivery information. And you're doing that without actually having to leave the content itself. So this is the beginning of what is a really long journey of how do we make content easier to transact. And it's going to be different for all types of products. Like this is your basic kind of detail page view, but you could imagine a shop the look version for fashion. There's a lot of different places we intend to take this. And again, enabled by VTEX and kind of the APIs, we can do that outside of the quote unquote traditional store.
And when I was recording this a couple of days ago, I didn't think that it was going to work.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm going to maybe pause this video here and then click on checkout. But it was great because it was a fantastic transition from your, that was a staging environment that you made available for us, but it's already seamlessly connected to the checkout.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it's a shared cart that stays with you when you shop in the article or when you come into the store. And that was a big kind of technical hurdle the team had to clear. But we want to make it frictionless so that you can seamlessly move back and forth between content and commerce, and the other way around too. If you're reading something or you're looking at a product in the store, you see articles that might inspire you to use it or think differently about kind of what you're shopping for. We want to make it really easy to come back into the content too, so you're living in the ecosystem longer than you do today.
So content and commerce coming?
That's coming in the next few weeks. It's actually live in production now, but we haven't rolled it out to a large audience. So everything you're seeing here today is actually available for a subset. So that's coming this month. As is probably the other thing we'll talk about here, which is the second store, Women's Health, the other title we own kind of in the fitness world. Will be going live momentarily, actually, not today, but in the next few weeks. And again, it's just showing that commitment to going into titles and interests where we know there's a real value for the content we're creating, helping you navigate this like wide world of selection, if you will, and then bringing the right commerce experience into those titles. So it will be far from the last, but it's kind of the beginning of the journey here, and really our proof point of all the architectural goals we set out to achieve.
I was just going to say that we did just Tuesday night or Monday night into Tuesday, the migration to FastStar Web Ops, and also moving into sub-account architecture to enable something like this to happen.
That's right. So now we're set up, and this is kind of our test case to say, what does it really take? How do we make sure we understand all the nuances of going to a lot of other titles, ideally even faster? And so we've proven most of those things. We'll be really happy to celebrate when this one goes live. But it's, again, the beginning of a longer journey, and one that has taken just an extraordinary amount of attention to detail and effort from all the teams involved. I have to give my final shout out to the team back at Hearst, because they have really put their energy into this since day one. The other point we didn't mention is we didn't have a team when we started this, or it was a small team, I should say. So we ended up hiring most of our engineering team during the build, which is not a tactic I would recommend for most folks, but it's kind of necessary in our case. And their ability to learn the product, understand how to optimize it, and deliver what I think is a really solid commerce experience in such a short period of time is really just outstanding on their side as well. And I owe them a great debt of gratitude for it.
Yeah, so there you have it, everyone. So if you're thinking about building a multi-head architecture, that, if you have a multi-brand company enterprise and you want to simplify, this is potentially one of the things that you can do.
It's certainly possible, and I think we're a good test case, even though we've got some things that are kind of unique to the Hearst use case.
Thank you very much, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having
everyone.
us.